Well, it's a great honor to introduce our next speaker. I want to tell you a few things about the next speaker. She grew up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. She went to Harvard University, then medical school at Jefferson, where she earned a medical degree. Not so bad for a start. Huh? Since 2001, she has been a Summit resident. First, she was a staff member at Overlook Hospital. Then she was practicing family medicine in Summit. This is what I think gave her the will to serve and help people improve lives before all. She engaged in many sports. In college, she played lacrosse and field hockey. We can say she's an outdoorsy. She likes to run. She even ran a marathon. She plays paddle tennis and plays golf too. Let me tell you a bit about her family. She's married and has 4 children. A busy woman, definitely. Her older son graduated from UNC Chapel Hill and now works for Jeffries. The second is a 20-year-old at UPenn studying chemical engineering. Okay, guys, you got a few of you over there. The third is at UPenn studying, studying neuroscience at Michigan. Did I get that right? Sorry. And the last one is her baby 16-year-old in high school. All her children are into sports as well. She still coaches Summit Lacrosse at the Summit Lacrosse Club. There's a story that a few years ago, she was coaching with her baby in her backpack, running on the sideline with another one of her child running with her on the side. Nothing can stop her, as you can see. She has always been a perpetual volunteer. She volunteered as a board member at the Connection for Women and Families. She was the chairwoman of the Santa Claus shop, a shop for the needy. She was the president of the Summit Board of Health. She volunteered teaching medical residents at the Overlook Hospital. She is still a Harvard alumni interviewer. What has she not done yet? I want to apologize here for forgetting all the awards that she has had during her life and the other functions and volunteering that she has done. If she claims not to be a politician, she really is a woman of action. It is all those qualifications that motivated the people of Summit to elect her as their mayor. I have been to many town council meetings and witnessed how good a listener she is. She cares deeply about the residents and understands the surrounding noise that can influence decisions. Please welcome Dr. and Mayor Elizabeth Fagan.
Thank you. I want to know how you heard that story about the sideline baby backpack situation. It did happen. There may have been pizza thrown at children too, so I can't speak to my mothering capabilities, but they're all alive still, so I feel pretty good about that. So I have a PowerPoint. So I put together a PowerPoint mostly so you didn't just have to stare at me while I'm speaking for 45 minutes, which sounds like a really long time. Hopefully you won't fall asleep. But these are just, to back me up and to remind me what I'm supposed to be talking about, things that I talk about kind of on a daily basis, so I shouldn't forget them, but it's nice to have a crib sheet. So the first thing is sort of an overview of some of the things I'll be talking about, sort of 30,000 foot view. there are challenges every day in governance, and with those challenges, I would say some opportunities as well. So we'll talk about addressing affordable housing, which I know is probably something that a lot of you are hearing about if you're paying even a tiny bit of attention in the state of New Jersey. It's an ongoing conversation. It's something that I spend a lot of time addressing and trying to identify solutions for. It's not easy, as you can imagine, in a place like this area where you know, we're very fortunate. And affordable is tough. Affordable in New Jersey, just at baseline, is difficult, and affordable in the New York metro area is even more challenging. So we'll talk about that. And balancing the growth that comes with the conversation around affordable housing. If you look at neighboring towns like Chatham, Berkeley Heights, you know, New Providence here, and Springfield, Milburn, there's a lot of development happening, and a lot of that is stemming from the conversation around affordable housing. So that's something we'll touch on. Something that I heard a lot about and have a concern about is public safety. I heard a lot about it when I was knocking on doors campaigning. I've heard a lot about it as I sit in my office and receive emails from concerned residents. Something that we've worked really hard to address. We're continuing to do that. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we've done to address public safety. Talk a little bit about improving our infrastructure, particularly our parks and our outdoor spaces. It's something that I'm passionate about because, as DJ mentioned, I do enjoy the outdoors. So it's something that we've spent some time on and will continue, again, to be a topic of conversation in Summit. And then lastly, I'll just mention, I know some people have asked me about some of the leadership changes and this restructuring that's happening at City Hall and that has happened at City Hall in the last year or so. So with that, we'll start about affordable housing. So affordable housing has been a conversation in New Jersey for almost 50 years. Started in the mid-70s with some lawsuits actually down in South Jersey near where I grew up. And we've gone through several rounds of affordable housing conversations. So we're currently in round 3, and we're sort of at the tail end of that. June 30th this year is actually the end of what is termed round 3. And as we finish that up, we look into round 4, which is the next decade. And the legislation, there was legislation passed last spring, in March, I believe, to update some of the requirements around affordable housing and sort of how municipalities and which municipalities would and sort of how this affordable housing gets addressed. So what we've done in Summit in the past year is try to leverage some of our relationships and relationships with Atlantic Health. You know, thankfully, I actually was the beneficiary of the Atlantic Health, what I would term affordable housing or workforce housing as a resident. That doesn't count towards our affordable housing numbers, but it is affordable, it is workforce, it's for the employees of Atlantic Health. But trying to leverage that relationship. And there's an organization named Our House, and hopefully most of you have heard of Our House. If you haven't, it's a really remarkable nonprofit that helps special needs individuals. They have group homes where they deliver care and allow special needs individuals to live a little bit independently. Some of them are completely independent. Some of them live with 24-hour care. There's a gentleman that many of you, if you know Summit at all or have been around the block a little bit in downtown Summit, you may know a guy by the name of Andy Anderson. He's the actual mayor of Summit. And if you don't know him, you should get to know him. But he is Our House resident. He lives independently, loves to walk around town. And we've been partnering with Our House in the last several months. We've actually got an agreement with them to use some of our affordable housing trust money to upgrade one of their group homes, which is on Greenfield Avenue in Summit, which has been there for several years, I think decades, probably, actually. But they're also looking for, Andy and a couple of his cronies live in a place where they're concerned about falls and aging in place because there are stairs. It's not ideal for folks that have limited mobility or are unsteady on their feet. So they're actually looking for space in Summit to create another sort of group home where it's kind of ADA accessible and just a safer situation for, and Andy is sort of their example. And I'm not, for the doctors in the audience, I'm not violating HIPAA laws because our house has used Andy actually as an example of, just to get people to understand and to have raise awareness about what their cause is. But our agreement with them is that they get some affordable housing trust money to upgrade their current group home, and they're also trying to identify a new location. And if they identify a new location, we then will, the City of Summit will then also help them either upgrade a facility if they identify a home that they can convert into a group home, or if they're building from scratch even, we will provide them some money towards that effort. And those units will then be deed restricted so they qualify as some of our affordable housing units. Just back up just a second. Affordable housing is, I didn't realize quite how complicated it is until I got really in the weeds, and it's really complicated. So I've gotten probably a medical school worth of education, 4 years worth of education in the last 10, 12 months about it. So it is complicated. There are various ways that you can accomplish affordable housing goals. So there's senior housing, there's special needs housing, there's veteran housing. There's a lot of different ways to accomplish these goals. And so we're looking as a town to really be a little bit creative about solutions, because we also are trying to balance, the development, the density that comes with a lot of the solutions. Let's see, what else? I think I got all of those. Oh, and one of the things so in our settlement agreement around round 3, one of the things that Summit as a community was very clear about was really the desire to intersperse the affordable housing units with, sort of weave them into the community, weave them into the fiber of the community, and not just plunk a building in the middle of town, which we do have actually. And I will say, I'm very proud to be a part of a community that thought about this long before I could even utter the words affordable housing. So we have 3 buildings that are owned by the Summit Housing Authority and run by the Summit Housing Authority that are actually Section 8 housing. And those were built 5 decades ago, 4 and 5 decades ago. The Vito Gallo building, which is right across from City Hall at 12 Chestnut, that's a senior building for those of you who don't know. That was Summit's effort long before there was even a conversation about Mount Laurel and this affordable housing. That was one of the efforts in Summit. There are 2 other family housing buildings in Summit as well. So we have a tradition of really taking care of our people. We have a tradition of trying to establish places where people can find affordable homes. So that's something that we will continue to foster. Let's see. And so in addition to trying to leverage our relationships, and not just mine, but other people on council, people in the city, on our city staff, just looking around at the businesses in town and the organizations and the not-for-profits in town. We've also looked at how to address our zoning to encourage developers to come and accommodate some affordable housing as they develop responsibly. And again, I mentioned some of the overdevelopment, which is a concern. It's a concern for our first responders. It's a concern for our infrastructure, our roads, our sewers, our sanitation, all of the things that we sort of take for granted a little bit. If you double the density here, obviously, the infrastructure that's 100 years old isn't going to accommodate some of that. So being thoughtful around how to accomplish the need for affordable housing while also considering how to not triple the density or double the density overnight and really let us grow as a sort of natural path. So one of the things that Summit has done, and a lot of municipalities surrounding us have done, is to do something called an overlay zone. So we look at various locations throughout town, and there now are, I think the 8th one was the one that we passed this year. Well, actually, sorry, 2024, feels like this year. And that's called the Morris Broad Overlay. And that is the consideration of our old firehouse, and I can say old, thankfully, now, because we've moved down the street. So our old firehouse, which is right behind the YMCA, the 7 Cedar Street office building, which we purchased in 2019, and the Chestnut Street parking lot, which is just a surface parking lot adjacent to the old firehouse and St. Teresa's Church, the small memorial church there. Those 3 properties were the subject, and again, I'm assuming you guys, since you're as astute and involved as you are, that you're here every Tuesday, I'm assuming you heard about Broad Street West and that you probably heard a little bit about the rumblings in town, in Summit, about the concerns around what might happen there. So now, because that sort of got put to bed, we need to think about what to do with those properties. A lot of people have asked me, what's going to happen there? It would take a lot of capital for Summit to develop or create something there. And so the effort right now is really to prepare those properties to sell. And so one of the pieces of that conversation was, how do we describe that area so that somebody doesn't come in and plunk a giant 7-story building there? How do we make sure that we address some of the concerns that came out in that conversation around Broad Street West? And so we created an overlay zone there that will definitively, no matter what happens there, there must be at least 7 affordable housing units, so back to affordable housing, but also maintain some green space. Make sure that it is adequately parked so that we don't sort of have overflow parking in a place where parking is a challenge already. So that's sort of the plan. So the overlay zone addresses many of the concerns. It's building height, it's density, it's affordable housing, it's parking, it's green space. And that's the first sort of part of the process. We're currently in a process right now where we're getting that land appraised so that we can put it out for bid. So any of you guys want to buy an old firehouse, let me know. Who said yes? It doesn't come with the fire engines, I'm sorry. So that conversation and all of the conversations around affordable housing and around development are really important to me, because one of the things that I know drew me to stay in Summit was the quaint character of our town, and the diversity of landscape. So the real estate isn't just 1, 2, 3, and we just rinse and repeat in terms of architecture. It's really, we have 200 years worth of different architecture and evolution of architecture, which is something that I think is really valuable and makes Summit. So in all of these conversations, we're looking to do our job and make sure that we address the things that are important to people, and to make sure that we don't get sued also, that's a piece of it. But to also be really, really cognizant of what Summit looks like now, what we think it should look like in the future, and try to be consistent about the beautiful evolution of our town. So that's that. I spoke a little bit about public safety. This, again, is, if you have to name the things I spend the most hours in the day or hours in the week on, this is a big one. So we had, as did a lot of places in New Jersey, we had a lot of auto thefts, and then we were having break-ins. Once people started locking their cars, people started breaking into homes to steal key fobs. Just a couple of things that we've done. Our police chief last year came to us and said, I'd really like to add 4 police officers. And we haven't added to the table of organization in 40 years. And our population has increased pretty dramatically. Not only our population on paper, but also I look at Overlook Hospital. From the time I began there in 2001 to today, it's doubled in capacity, bed capacity, which means it's probably quadrupled in staff and visitors and things like that. So that contributes to congestion, it contributes to pedestrian safety, it contributes to, just the volume of people coming into Summit. Additionally, Bristol Myers Squibb has done a lot of renovation and reconstruction and things like that. They have a lot of employees. The community has grown, not just with sort of the daytime population, but the nighttime population rather, but the daytime influx and pass-throughs. And our police force hadn't grown at all. Our fire department is reminding me also that they have not grown in 40 years. So, but one of the things we did, the police chief asked for 4 police officers. I still haven't found the money tree. I'm looking every day for it, but financially we could not add 4 police officers last year, but we did add 2. I think that has made a significant difference. I think there are some things at the state and county level that have also contributed to a decrease in overall crime, a decrease in auto thefts, and a decrease in break-ins. So that I'm really proud of that. One of the other things that we did was something called the Resident Protection Ordinance. This was an ordinance that's another layer. It's another tool in the tool belt for our police officers. A lot of the folks that were stealing cars were minors. So we were loath to throw people in jail, ruin their lives, maybe give them a chance to rehabilitate and find a different course of action and maybe a different line of work than stealing cars. So we created this. It basically says that if you are trespassing on a private property and you yank on a door handle with the intent to take it, or you yank on a doorknob, a house doorknob, with the intent to break in, and you get caught, you have to get caught, then it's almost like a ticket. It's a summons to say you were attempting to break in or attempting to steal, and it's a municipal level, so it's not the county, which is where if you get caught stealing a car, you're going to the county, you're not coming to the municipal judge. But if the county, prosecutor says, you know what, you're 15, really hate to kind of mar your record, this is the first offense, whatever. This is an opportunity for kind of a plea bargain to say, hey, you know what, we're gonna just kick this down to, our judge down in New Providence to say, what can we do? Now, can we fine you? We can fine you, or we can give you community service. So it's an opportunity for us to actually potentially help some of these folks that are a little misguided. Maybe they're young and maybe there's hope for them, but also it's a deterrent. It's something that actually, I am proud to say, many municipalities have followed suit and copied. So that tells you something, right? Imitation is the finest form of flattery, they say. So that's something we've done. And actually, in speaking to our municipal judge recently, he mentioned that he really liked it. He has used it. He thought that it was a great tool. So good to hear that. Other things about public safety. So pedestrian safety is top of my list. I hear about it all the time, particularly in our central business district. We have had pedestrians get hit. The state statistics on pedestrian injuries and fatalities they're abysmal. So we're not unique in that, but it's something that is a focus. And with that, we're looking at people who park in our crosswalks, people who park too close to a stop sign, people who park in an illegal spot. We got yellow lines all over the street, everywhere. People just put their park anywhere lights on. I got news for you. They're not actually park anywhere lights. They're hazard lights, but people think they're park anywhere lights. So we've cracked down on illegal parking. We doubled the number of parking summonses. So don't park illegally in Summit, because you will probably get a ticket. But that effort isn't to be, mean or nasty. It's to encourage better behavior from our parkers. It's to create a safer environment for our pedestrians. Because if you've been down on Maple Street in front of 47 Maple, which is right on the train tracks, and there's 2 crosswalks crossing Maple Street onto Union Place, and there's a UPS truck that parks in between those 2 crosswalks. You can't see anything. If you're driving and a pedestrian comes out, it's a surprise, I will say that. So one of the things we really have focused on, and we've asked our parking services and our police officers to focus on, is to just move people along or ticket if they're parked illegally, because that is causing a safety issue. So that's something we're really working on. We currently have a grant from the state that is actually supporting more overtime for police to focus on pedestrian safety as well. So something that I am very passionate about. I walk a lot. I live close enough to town that I walk to town a lot, so I prefer not to get hit by a car. And then one of the other things that we have seen an increase in, and I'm sure you all have seen it as well and felt it, is an increased use of electric bikes and electric scooters. And this is tricky because the state hasn't caught up with the technology yet. The legislation is not, like, you can't register certain ones because if they don't go fast enough or their motor's not big enough, and it's very confusing. And so it's hard, and then the laws around where you can drive these things aren't really clear. So we're working on an ordinance to kind of give some guidance to folks who are riding them. For those of you who are going to go out on your e-scooter or your e-bike after this and ride home, I know DJ's on it, that that's a wheeled vehicle. You are required to abide by the vehicular laws, not the pedestrian laws, right? So people get confused, even on a regular bicycle, just a people-powered bike. If you're in a crosswalk, you don't have the right of way just because you're in a crosswalk, right? If you're on wheels, you abide by wheeled laws. So unless you get off your bike and walk it in the crosswalk, I don't have to stop for you. I'm probably not going to mow you down because I'm not that kind of person, and it gets messy. I just got a car wash. But people don't realize this. A lot of people are really unaware of what the rules are that govern can you ride it on a sidewalk? And if you're riding it on a sidewalk at 25 miles an hour and I'm walking with my baby, one of my 4 million, that can be dangerous. It can cause a problem. So we're looking at ways to address that concern. Maybe, and the conversation is maybe in the central business district where we're congested a little bit more than out in the perimeter, maybe there's a way to sort of govern that a little bit better. So if anybody has any ideas, I'm open to them. But we are looking around at other municipalities. We're asking the state. I've spoken to Nancy Munoz about this. She's trying to work on it in Trenton. So I think it's something that's, it's sort of up and coming and we haven't caught up. And so we're going to look to educate the public. We're going to look to try to create a little bit safer guidelines so that we can, keep people safe both on them and for the people who are driving cars and or riding them or walking around them. The other thing about that is something that drives me a little bananas as a medical provider, people that don't wear their helmets. And that's true on foot-propelled scooters, on skateboards, on any kind of open-air vehicle. To me, it's a no-brainer, pun intended, to wear a helmet. And we need to find a way to make it cool to wear a helmet. And we need to do a better job as adults, in my opinion, of modeling that behavior. I know when I learned to ski, nobody wore a helmet. And then who was it? One of the Kennedys crashed into a tree and died, and somebody else famous crashed, and then all of a sudden everyone was wearing helmets, besides which they're warm. So, it's education, it's trying to model the behavior, but that's another place where, it's a public safety concern. And, it really, again, having taken care of people with traumatic brain injuries and watching a very, very good friend of mine actually go into the surgical situation, thankfully come out totally fine, but really, we were really worried he might not make it. So that, and an adult on a skateboard. So, it's a real thing. So helmets are a focus, and anything we can do to encourage the public to consider using those is something that's not just e-bike or e-scooter safety, but that's just global. And one of the things I comment on that all the time is our law in New Jersey is 17 and under, you're required to wear a helmet. And I sort of look at that and say, not sure that when you're 18, it's any better to crash your head into the pavement, but that's just me. So trying to enforce that as well is something, and encourage good behavior, is something that we're looking at doing. One of the other conversations that I've had a lot is around our homelessness encampment near our train station. It has become an issue for a lot of people, kids especially. We've had several homeless individuals approach teenage girls with inappropriate language, video material. So we started a homelessness task force in June or July. And, some of this is helping folks get housed. We have housed or gotten into rehab and employment 12 individuals since July. I'm pretty proud of that. And that is, I can't take credit for any of it, really. It's volunteers and it's service providers. But the task force has met a considerable number of times. I think we were once a week for couple of hours when we first started. Now we're closer to every other week, every 3 weeks. But what that did was there are a lot of service providers doing a lot of great work in Summit. We've got Bridges, we've got SHIP, we've got Grace, we've got Summit Warm Hearts. And they were operating in silos. And rather than addressing the sort of underlying issue of you need a home, they were operating sort of making duplicate efforts and not accomplishing the sort of end game, which was to get people off the streets. So we got them all in a room. They started coordinating. They realized that they were talking to the same people, and we were able to really accomplish some great things there. So, and that's, and some of the folks, and I started that out by saying we had people approaching young girls with inappropriate things, but we also had people that they didn't have anywhere to turn. They didn't know how to get to the next place. They didn't know what the resources were. And so we've encouraged them to engage in case management, and we've been really supportive with the case management engagement. So that's made a big difference. We still have a couple of folks that are I'm going to call them our problem children. They are either intoxicated, urinating in public, things like that, and we're trying to address those things as well. They're a harder group to solve, but we're getting there. So, but I think one of the things that the major tenet of that conversation is that they're all people, they're humans, and they're in our community. So whatever we can do to help them, we're doing. So. And again, I sort of point to, I would say, positive results overall. We have had decrease in overall crime. We've had an increase in quality of life summonses and parking summonses, which again, I think contributes to the overall public safety, and that's sort of the goal. Public spaces. We have Maybe Playground, which is the playground on the Village Green. If you don't know it, it used to be one of my favorite places to take my kids because I lived right there. And it is set to be demolished and rebuilt as our first 100% ADA accessible, sensory friendly playground. Really excited about that. That's through a variety of funding sources, mostly grants actually. But we had a lot of community engagement around what was going to be there and what would be most beneficial. And it really is sort of a cradle to the grave playground. It will be. And that's set to start construction this summer. Hopefully it'll be finished by the fall. And then Bryant Pond, for anybody who has been by Bryant Pond or remembers when Bryant Pond was in its glory, and it was a beautiful place where we could go ice skating and, nobody swam in it, I don't think, but it is county land, so we, have limited ability to really affect it directly, but there's been a lot of pressure on the county to come and remediate what has become just an overgrown kind of mess. They began a project called hydro raking last spring. They did a couple of rounds of the hydro raking. They ran out of money, basically. They went over budget and it was put on pause, but they have allocated new resources. I've been told, fingers crossed, that the hydro raking will restart this spring, and they are telling me they're committed to getting that right. So hopefully we will see a beautiful Bryant Pond and we can all go ice skating together. And then the park line is something that has been, I think it's almost 10 years since the city of Summit basically got the land from an abandoned rail line that goes really from Bryant Park all the way up to Overlook Hospital, right behind Overlook. And the beginning stages of that are done. And what happened was they cleared all the brush and all the kind of stuff that was overgrowth and paved a trail. And they put in, the most recent addition was a bridge over Morris Avenue. And then the next phase, which we're talking about now and which we have funding for, again, through grants and through some private donations, and this is a public-private partnership. This isn't really the City of Summit. It's the Parkline Foundation has really pushed to get this done. There's a phase, whatever phase we're in. The next phase will be from Morris Avenue down over Ashwood Avenue and over Russell Place. There are two bridges there that need to be what's the word? They're like created so that they're pedestrian friendly, basically. So, and that is hopefully, again, that's supposed to start this spring or summer, so hopefully that'll get going. That's an ongoing project, and the ultimate goal is to connect the community, because that's, it's a park where we didn't have a park before. It's hard to create a park when you don't have any land, so this is an exciting opportunity for Summit to create a park much like the High Line in New York City. That's the concept, and really to connect the Bryant Park section area near Jefferson, all of those areas that are sort of dangerous to walk to town or for kids to get from their, their part of the community all the way into downtown or to the middle school. So that's an opportunity for us to connect the community a little bit more and beautify it. So that's happening. For those of you who are interested in recycling and environment, our transfer station, which I personally still call the dump. I know it's supposed to be the transfer station, but I call it the dump. I know, but it is. So we do food composting there. The Summit Free Market is there. If you haven't been, it's kind of a really cool place. It's open a couple times a month on a Saturday. And you can take things and just donate them, and you can go and find, other people's trash is another man's treasure or something like that. So that's an opportunity to kind of recycle home goods and things that you don't really think are ready for the trash. So that's a really cool thing. And actually there's a Facebook page where you can do you can use online services to kind of recycle your chairs, tables, whatever, pictures. And the Book Barn is another place that's kind of a cool, I think, pretty unique thing in Summit, which is also in the transfer station. And you can take books, you can bring books, leave them there, and they don't want encyclopedias. I tried to get rid of my Encyclopedia Britannica. They didn't like that so much, but, and we recycled 343 tons in 2024. So for the data folks out there, that was my exciting number. These are, oh gosh, I have to actually put my glasses on. Let's see, this is Parkline. This is Bryant Pond. This is the Free Market Building. And this is a schematic of what maybe playground will look like. It's the colors, I think, are maybe off, and there's a couple things that are a little bit different, but the concept is there. New firehouse. Finally, our firefighters are operational 24/7 out of the new firehouse building. And we have an emergency operations center there. So for instance, during Sandy, people were sleeping in our old firehouse, and they were there 24 hours for 10, 12, 15 days in a row. Wasn't the most comfy place in the world. The new firehouse is beautiful and has the space to accommodate the emergency responders. So that's exciting. And one of the things that I learned and I didn't know, which I thought was really interesting, one of the reasons behind the new firehouse and the sort of need for the new firehouse is to address health concerns for our firefighters. Obviously, it's a risky business, but one of the things that has become a real issue is lifelong cancer incidence has gone up, or is relative to the general population is much higher in firefighters. Makes sense, right? But one of the things we could do better is to keep the HVAC system from where they sleep and where they leave their gear separate. And so that was one of the things that happened in the new firehouse. And there's a huge decontamination area. So it's several steps. When they come back from fighting a fire or from a call, they get out of their turnout gear and they decontaminate, shower, everything, and before they even enter the living quarters, because our firefighters do live in the firehouse. They're there, they sleep overnight, they do 24 hours. So that's kind of, they're all very excited about that, especially the young guys. They're pretty new. So the police department, they're mad because they think they should have a nice building too. One of the things that's funny, my husband likes to press me on this, so maybe some of you share his view. He's like, why do we have a paid fire department? So many municipalities have these volunteer firefighters. And the reality is the volunteer firefighters the firehouses are having a tough time finding volunteers. I don't know, you gotta have a little bit of a screw loose to run into a burning building, I think, but it is critical. We really do have, we have a need for emergency response. We have Route 24, we have Route 78, and I actually have an app on my phone that tells me every time the fire department gets a call. The number of calls they get in a day for crashes on 78 and 24 is pretty high. They also back up, the helipad at Overlook. When there's a helicopter coming in, they're on call just in case something goes wrong. So that's, an Overlook in and of itself is a huge entity. I already covered that, it's much bigger than it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And so, obviously stuff goes wrong. And we have Bristol Myers Squibb, another place where stuff can go wrong. And Kenview, which is coming, which is a J&J spinoff, also kind of, we have a lot of buildings, we got a lot of density, we've got a lot of vehicles, traffic. So I think it's really important that we are supporting our firefighters, and I do believe that, unfortunately for the taxpayers, I think a paid fire department is something that really is critical to the public safety in Summit. Oh, this is our new firehouse. This is facing Salerno Duane, and this is actually a museum. They don't call it a museum, they call it a historical something or other. It's a museum. But so that's a place where you can learn some of the history. This was the parade from the old firehouse to the new firehouse when we did the grand opening. This was just part of the ceremony. This is the old guy. It doesn't come with the firehouse, I'm sorry. But it's the 1940s, I think. And then Father Bob from St. Teresa's blessed the firehouse, so we feel pretty good about that. It's pretty nice. If you haven't been by, you're welcome to go see it. It's pretty impressive. There's some training facilities in there as well, which I didn't mention, which hopefully at some point we'll be able to sort of outsource and invite some outside fire departments to train. So hopefully that may be a revenue source, which would be nice. All right, and then a lot of people have asked me about updates in City Hall. So our city administrator left, Michael Rogers left in the summer, and we did a search. We interviewed a lot of people, and then several of us looked at each other and said, wow, we really have somebody right here in our midst that knows our city and is really passionate about keeping Summit affordable and safe and all of the things that we care about. Tammy Baldwin, who has been our CFO for 8 years, also is a city administrator, and in fact stood in for Michael Rogers 2 summers ago when he was out for about 8 weeks. Did a phenomenal job then, and so she is now both the city administrator and the CFO. It's a big job. She's, I don't think she's slept in about a month, but our budget will be done. So she's terrific. We're very fortunate to have Tammy. And actually her maybe 2 or 3 greats grandfather was the 2nd mayor of Summit, little known fact. We also are restructuring our Department of Community Services for better efficiency. So it is sort of complicated. The quick and dirty is, used to have a director of community services, and underneath that, DPW, construction, land use, a couple of things. So what we've done is we've taken out that layer between the city administrator, and now there's our city engineer, a land use official, and the construction official, and engineer and DPW kind of go together. They all report directly to our new city administrator. So that's a little bit more efficient line of communication. So we'll see how that works out. That is the plan for the moment. Our police chief, Chief Zagorski, who is a New Providence resident, is retiring. He's announced his retirement. He will be with us until the end of April. So we're in the process of looking to hire a new chief. It's an internal process. So we have, the applications are open currently, and there's only a handful of eligible people within the department. So we'll see how that goes. That is a process that hopefully will be finished very quickly, because what that will presumably do is then have a vacancy below that, and then again, and then again, and then again. So we will have to raise people up, and that's a process. So we should get there before May. I just swore in 4 new firefighters, very excited about that. And we also have a new communications officer, chief communications officer. Her name is Jenny Hoff. She's fantastic. She's a great resource. She's actually, I think she might love Summit almost as much as I do, but she's new here. She just moved here from Texas last August, and it was a chance meeting, and she applied for the job of chief communications officer. She's phenomenal. She's background in journalism, so she's great. She's done a really great job. Let's see. Transparency, I'm going to try and wrap up because I think you guys are probably tired of looking at me and hearing my voice. One of the really important things to me is that the community knows what's going on, that they know how to reach me, they know how to reach council, they know how to get in touch with city employees. So we have a police blotter that goes out every 2 weeks. You can find it on the website. We have Nixle alerts, Smart 911, all of the things that you can sign up for if you're a Summit resident, or even if you're just curious. And on our website, there's a notification tab, and if you go to the notification tab, you can sign up for all kinds of different things. You can sign up to get the city council meeting agendas sent to your email. You can get texts about, crime stats, all kinds of things, planning board meetings, all the things that you really are fascinating. And then we do have a pretty active presence on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But a couple other things we're doing, Summit Snapshot is new. That's every Friday. It's on social media, and it's just kind of what's happening, what's to come. So if you're curious about that, you can sign up for that notification. I do Mondays with the mayor every Monday. And it's just, depends on what we want to talk about, but typically I'll give an update, or I'll, talk about something that's coming up. And then lastly, we're going to start, we hope quarterly, it might be 3 times a year, Summit newsletter, just a 2-page front and back, delivered to your homes. Hopefully, we'll also, the plan is to also have a digital version that you can opt into, so you don't have to get the paper version, but really just high level stuff, what's going on, what to look for, and then an opportunity on the back to engage with us, ask us for, ask us questions and that kind of thing. So really trying to be accessible to everyone. And then I think this might be close to the last slide, but Summit's a pretty inclusive place. We try to have programs for everybody. The Department of Community Programs does programs for everybody, again, sort of cradle to the grave, I call it, because that's my training. My training is cradle to the grave. So we have a community pool. We have the golf course. There are events hosted by the Department of Community Programs year-round. They have a bunch of sports for the kids, camps for the kids, activities when school is out. Hometown Heroes is the banners that are honoring either veterans, an active military. That's something that, actually, if anybody here has an opinion about, I'd love to hear it. There's discussion about either extending the duration of the postings of the banners. Now they go up Memorial Day and they come down in August. We're talking about, doesn't it seem more appropriate for them to come down around Veterans Day? So if anybody here has an opinion, I'd like to hear it. I can't say that your opinion will be the only one, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. I also, we have the Mayor's Wellness Campaign, which is a statewide initiative focusing on community health and wellness. And that seemed to be right in my wheelhouse, so I kind of glommed onto that a little bit. We've done bike rodeos, we've done, and some of the helmet initiatives and the things I was talking about public safety and pedestrian safety are pieces of that as well. Paint the Town Green is another thing that we're doing actually across Summit, New Providence, and Berkeley Heights. Actually started here in New Providence, but that is for mental health awareness during the month of May. Last year we tied green ribbons. New Providence did a really great job. We kind of got into it a little bit late, so we're hoping to do a better job this year with merchants in town, trying to just raise awareness about mental health and some of the resources that are available, and also just trying to eliminate the stigma of asking for help if you need it. And then I think that's it. Let me see. Oh, and then lastly, budget for 2025. Our departments have requested, they've proposed their budgets. We're working in the Finance Committee to go through them and kind of trim the fat because there's a little bit of that. There will be a budget snapshot which goes out, it looks like this, goes out every year. We will do that again this year. And the budget is set to be adopted in April. I think, oops, that's it. Questions? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for listening to me, and thank you for having me. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to take questions.
Yes, thank you so much for a fascinating presentation. And you have time for questions? Privilege of the microphone, let me ask a question myself. As you said, affordable housing is complicated. And my impression is that there's at least one organization which will give each city a number. Here is what we think you should target. And my question is, how do you deal with that? I imagine there's a lot of negotiation that goes into that.
Okay. He started with an easy one. Yes, fair share housing is sort of the entity that determines by a formula what our number for round 4 will be. And yes, indeed, there is negotiation, not right now. So last round there was much more negotiation because it was really a judicial process. This time there are special justices or judges. There's only like 3 in the state, and there are 500 and some number of municipalities in the state. You do the math, try to figure out how in the world 3 people are going to adjudicate 500, questions about their number. So there will be opportunities to address what the number is now. We, as a municipality, had the choice of whether we should accept the number given to us now. We did that, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but there is an opportunity to re-look at that number. Our current number is 345. It's a big number. We don't have any land in Summit, except for the park line, but does that answer your question?
Great. Thank you very much. That was super informative. I'm a 31-year Summit resident, and as a longtime commuter, not really involved in the town, so it's great to hear what's going on. So thank you for that. Also, I really appreciate the fact that you're talking about real life issues that the residents have to deal with, quality of life topics. It's refreshing to hear a politician address those things instead of culture war issues. I have two questions. One is, property taxes is always a hot topic. And Summit, as I'm sure the other communities in Western Union County, do have relatively high property taxes. I know that the city is only responsible for about 1/3 of our property tax bill. And I will say that it's been remarkably stable over the last 8 or 10 years. Is there a little bit of a preview that maybe you can give us in terms of how you see that trending, either in the upcoming fiscal year and in the future? And the other question I have is one that my wife insisted I ask. We have a little bit of a safety hazard situation at an intersection near where we live. If you could just point me in the right direction to the right department or person to speak with. Thank you.
Of course, thank you. Okay, thank you for the questions. I'm going to start with the easy one first, which is you can actually email me, and I can get that on a safety committee agenda. And it may already be on there. It wouldn't be shocking, but it's a great question. And I'm going to make a plug, actually, while we're talking about it, for our C-Click Fix app, which is also not just an app, but there's a location on the city website where you can report a concern. Those get automatically distributed to the appropriate department. So something like this, where there's a dangerous intersection or a concern about an intersection, you can report it through C-Click Fix. You can always email me, and my email is efagan@cityofsummit.org. You can also go to the City of Summit website and find me there. Unfortunately, I think I'm on the first page. And then the other question, I've already forgotten because I talk too much. Property taxes. Was repression. So the goal, obviously, I mean, I'm a taxpayer too, so the goal is to try to remain as flat as we can. I would love to tell you all that, we're gonna cut your taxes. Well, I'd be lying, because if I'm cutting your taxes, I'm probably cutting services, and I don't wanna do that, because I think we're accustomed to a level of service in Summit. So the goal is always to kind of maintain, a level of, we really don't want to raise taxes tremendously. I mean, inflation happens, costs go up. Our state insurance for our professionals, our fire and police, it's going up a lot. So, but the goal is make priorities that are consistent with the ability to kind of keep taxes under control.
I'd like to go back to something you said early on with the Broad Street West development. You said something to the effect of adding 7 affordable housing units. I believe that the percentage for housing units to be affordable in any development is 15% to 20%. So is that an indication of how many units you expect to have in that development?
Excellent question. So no, yes and no. The minimum will be 7, based on the overlay zone, the minimum that we will consider in that development. And if a developer comes in, they're going to be required to do a minimum of 7, whether it's 75% of what they do or 15%. Does that make sense?
Hi, I'm not a Summit resident, so I feel pretty safe asking this question. The municipal golf course, just so you know, our chairman works there. This group golfs there. Is there any contemplated changes with that use of the land or anything and opening it up to non-Summit residents? That's the first question. The second question is Marco Polo's is closing. Can you just talk about what's going on? It's a restaurant in Summit, okay? What's going to go on with that? Thank you.
Sure. I also enjoy the municipal golf course, so I will lay my body over there so that we don't lose that land. Man, this is the easiest crowd. No, yeah, no, there is no intention to change the use of that land. I think that's an asset to the community, as do the folks that sit on council. So the plan is to keep it that way. There will be some fee increases this year to cover. We need new bridges. There's a lot of things that need to happen there to maintain it. So, and it is open to non-residents. So, but just for just a tad bit more than if you are a resident. So, and you can take guests as well. So, and then the second question was about Marco Polo, and that has changed management. The gentleman that is, basically they're just doing a massive gut renovation. I have seen previews about what it is going to look like. It looks really exciting. Actually, the gentleman in charge of it is Nora Rada's son and daughter, I believe. I know her son, but somebody mentioned her daughter as well. So interestingly, he's a restaurateur. And there was actually, I think in the TAP recently, there was an article about what's to come there. But the concept, from what I've been told, is to open up that space with some windows and get some light in there and really, really spruce it up. It sounds like it's going to be pretty phenomenal. So.
My name is Edward Akin. I don't live in Summit either. I joined your pool this year and liked it very much because I didn't like what Cranford did. With that new project, are they going to be putting any movie theaters in or anything, or like big projects like what they've done in Cranford and other towns with cluster housing or whatever you call it?
So we are not going to determine what goes there. Whoever buys the properties will determine what goes there. The zoning sort of outlines what is permitted use, right? So could they come in and put a movie theater in there? They could. You have to make sure there's enough parking. But yeah, I mean, so it's sort of anybody's guess as to what that property will look like. The overlay zone does allow for residential, mixed use, first floor retail. And actually, I think office space is also permissible as well. So it could be a combination of a couple of things.
Do we have one online?
Yes, this is Rich Lander.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm a Berkeley Heights resident, and like all other towns, we have a tremendous amount of expansion. And I've seen infrastructure, like you mentioned, being handled. But what I really haven't heard from our town, and maybe not in this presentation, is how are we handling that expansion in the school? Having gone through Governor Livingston when we had people crammed into janitor's closets and portable classrooms out back, I just know it can be a real problem. So do you have any suggestions on how the towns should handle the impact on the school systems? Thank you.
I'd like to phone a friend. I don't have a really good answer for this. Yeah, I mean, it could potentially be an issue. Some of the affordable housing legislation addresses this sort of peripherally in that you can have senior housing, which wouldn't impact the schools. You can have, special needs housing, which theoretically wouldn't impact the schools. So, and veteran housing, things like that. So, but as far as the current development at the rate at which it's going, that's a concern, obviously. That's something that is always a topic of conversation when we talk about development and overdevelopment, and that's been a concern raised to me. It's one of the reasons that I did not support the giant building in the middle of Summit, because I thought that it would impact our schools in a negative way, and obviously something that we're very proud of, and I think we can all agree that New Providence, Berkeley Heights, and Summit have fantastic schools, and that's why a lot of us chose to live here and raise our families here. So it's a primary goal to maintain that excellence. It could be a very big problem in the future, and I don't have a brilliant answer on how to address it, other than to say that the state and the county, and we need to tell the people in charge that they need to think about these things when they are forcing municipalities to build out.
This will be the last question. Jim Blinn, please come up.
I wanted to ask about cooperation with neighboring towns. I know that New Providence, Summit, and Berkeley Heights do their court here, and I'm wondering if you have other things that you do together or are thinking about doing together.
So yes, the shared court was an endeavor to save some money and to make our courts more efficient. I'll tell you, the people that come into City Hall looking for the court aren't really happy when I tell them they have to drive down Springfield Avenue, but it does save us a little bit of money. There are other shared services. The dispatch center, actually, for fire and police actually also resides in New Providence. We're looking at that, actually, because New Providence pulled out of that agreement. So it's not really financially sensible anymore. So we're looking at what to do there. I'm trying to think, the shared service, Board of Health is a shared service. So that's something that we do with Westfield and a bunch of other municipalities as well. Again, anywhere we can, we will. We have a lot of conversations about this, and sometimes you have a conversation and you do one of these and you come back to, well, it's not going to save us that much money. It's going to cause more of a hassle. So there are, yes, the answer is yes, we do have shared services. I wouldn't say they're abundant, but we certainly do. And actually, Jordan Glatt is the czar of shared housing, one of the two czars in New Jersey. He's on my list to call for a couple of ideas. So thank you for the question.
Yeah, DJ, please come up and thank our speaker.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Fagan. This was really brilliant presentation. Yeah, it was. I was really amazed to see how much a mayor had to work to keep us safe and healthy and everything. The Old Guard have 3 ways to thank the speakers. One is a certificate, and on the certificate there is an orchid, because originally Summit was the orchid capital of the USA back in the 1920s. A historian, please. 30s. I think it was where the Gallo building is, where they had all those greenhouse and. Right, so this is for you. The second one is a real orchid.
Oh my gosh, that's gorgeous.
Voila.
Wow. Oh, thank you.
I'll carry it.
Okay, thank you.
I'll carry it. And the third one is a standing ovation.
Oh, I've never had one of those. Thank you.